Hello, and welcome to the commentary track for Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I'm Phil Stubbs, editor of DreamsFanzine.com, and with me to discuss the picture is Terry Gilliam, its director.
But a much older Terry Gilliam than its director. An old man teetering on the edge of the abyss.
Now, Terry, the picture was shot in 1997, 22 years ago. When was the last time you saw the picture?
Well, it's been years. I mean, I saw it when we were checking the grading on this print. We watched it without the soundtrack, and I was amazed by it. I thought, God, that's good filmmaking. And I was querying who actually made the film because it just seemed so powerful. Just the visuals, forget about the brilliant dialogue. So I was very impressed. And here we go. Let's make a beast of ourselves. We've got 2 hours to go.
So could you just take us through some of the elements of this opening sequence?
Well, basically, speed, power, escape. And it was wide-angle lenses and roaring cars. It was quite exciting. The Red Shark that Johnny is driving is Hunter Thompson's own car, which Johnny provided for the film by stealing it from Hunter and driving it down from Aspen, California.
All swooping and screeching and diving around the car.
Bats in the eyes. That's good stuff. I think one thing you should notice is Benicio is there with a great belly. He put on 40 pounds just for this. And Johnny made the ultimate sacrifice, as you'll see later when he pulls his hat off, of allowing us to shave his head. So it looked just like Hunter's, with 14 sad little strands of hair crossing the baldish dome.
Now, you didn't use Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones. Why not?
It was too expensive, quite frankly. I mean, despite a telephone call to Mick Jagger, the price was not going down. So it freed us in some way from the book. Because one of the problems is the book was such an important thing to me, and I had such respect for it. I just felt to give it life, one had to treat it with more disrespect. And so by not being able to start the film as Hunter started the book, we were free. And I love the bat lying there. And it wasn't a real bat, ladies and gentlemen. It was a fake one built by the props department.
Than a man in the depths of an ether binge.
And we also see a cactus reappearing all the time.
Yes. Thanks to Ralph Steadman's illustration of the book, there was always a cactus in one of his images. And we had to have that exact cactus. So we made one, which we carried around with us. And we pop it into the background in many shots along the way. There's, oh God, Benicio. Look at that. He has no shame. He has no fear. He's just outrageously awful. Now we end up with young Tobey Maguire, and he's wearing a T-shirt with what was supposed to be Mickey Mouse on it, as Ralph Steadman had illustrated in the book. However, we couldn't, even though we went to Disneyland and bought a Mickey Mouse T-shirt, we were not allowed to use it because even if you pay for it, it is not yours. It's still Walt Disney's till the ultimate end. So Ralph Steadman actually made us an original T-shirt. It's actually his artwork on it with all as it. Now Toby, we had to do a lot of work on his head as well. A lot of in this film is about shaving people's heads.
And for this sequence, you shaved his head, but in a later sequence, you had to use a bald cap.
Yes, this is good here. Later on, because we didn't finish all of our work with Toby, and when we got him back, he refused to let us shave his head a second time. Now, what's interesting in this scene, Johnny's doing this dialogue, and if you notice his cigarette holder and what he's doing with the cigarette, he's showing me that he knows where the corners of the frame are. And he's pointing it just to show how clever he is.
And the end of the cigarette would have been very close to the camera.
Oh, yes. with wide-angle lenses. It's a very tricky thing because I don't want to distort it too much. And Johnny could manipulate props like nobody I know.
I'm a doctor of journalism, man. This is important, goddammit. This is a fucking truth.
And what's interesting about it, he had spent so much time with Hunter. He kind of stole Hunter's soul, I think, because his mannerisms, his movements, his voice was exactly like Hunter Thompson. Some people thought it was a caricature. It was too much of a cartoon performance. Those people have never met Hunter Thompson.
And was it difficult to attach the camera to the car?
No, that was okay. Because the car is actually on a transporter. It's not actually touching the ground. The tricky thing, we were all around that car, and we're driving at high speed. And we had the camera operator had to be sort of strapped in, or we held his belt occasionally. And we almost lost him at one point because he slipped.
Drinking Singapore slings with mezcal on the side.
So here we are at the in the Pogo Lounge of the Beverly Heights Hotel.
Yes, which was actually the old Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, where I have to say Robert Kennedy was murdered. So he set all this up, and we were just trying to recreate the period. It was interesting because all the clothes are sort of Poochies and Gucci's and things, and there's a lot of floral patterns here because this, to me, was our Garden of Eden. We start in the Garden of Eden, and we will leave this safe and beautiful place for this terrible adventure which is about to begin.
All I have to do, check into my soundproof suite. He'll seek me out. What do you think?
Tony Grisoni and I very early on decided this is kind of the Divine Comedy. It's with Virgil leading Dante into the levels of hell. And we, in our minds, were creating that for Fear and Loathing. So the Garden of Eden seemed to be the perfect place to begin. And you'll see in a forthcoming shot the angel with the flaming sword, making sure that there was no return.
We're gonna have to arm ourselves to the teeth.
Well, why not? I mean, if the thing's worth doing, worth doing right.
I'm not actually sure who's Adam and which is Eve in this one.
And there were attempts to make this picture prior to this film, and you were offered it, I understand, before.
Yes, it'd been around quite a while. There'd been scripts floating around. Jack Nicholson was apparently involved at different points. But I didn't particularly like the scripts, and I didn't think I was able to do the film. It was one of those dangerous things where you've got a book that you admire so much, you somehow don't want to ruin it by making a film of it. And so I avoided for quite a while until, I don't know, I'm trying to remember the moment when it happened, but I was sitting in Italy when I read the script. Therein is the angel with a flaming sword. Oh, it's lovely. And I read the script, which at this point had been written by Alex Cox and his girlfriend Todd, whose name I can't remember.
Todd Davies.
Todd Davies. And I thought the script was terrible, personally. But at that point, it had already Johnny and Benicio attached, and it had momentum. And I said, well, and I just met Johnny somewhere, and I thought, God, I love this guy. He's great. And that was the real attraction. It overcame my fear of taking on the book. And but I said I would want to rewrite the script. And so Tony Grisoni and I got to work at rewriting it, going back to the book, and not trying to be too clever with the book. Being true to the book was the key thing.
We were delayed en route when a stingray in front of us killed a pedestrian.
We just saw some great scenes of LA just there, and I understand
Yes, there's
there
one
was
shot.
one mural.
There's a mural there with the red shark. It's on screen for what, maybe 5 seconds, and it's a mural honoring Dolores Del Rio, famous actress, and it's on a side street in Hollywood. And I just thought a nice background, but apparently all anything that's on the side of a building is owned by somebody somewhere, and the guy who painted it demanded money for our use of it, even though it was just a background moment, and it seemed to be in a public space. But that's the world we live in now. It's very interesting. That parking lot is actually at the Ambassador Hotel as well. Once we were in one location, we tried to do as much as possible. This scene at the beach in Malibu was shot before we actually started the real shooting of the film. It was a way of getting around the budget limitations. So we went out one night and shot this. And I don't know, look at that. He's like a great American eagle.
So could you tell me about meeting Hunter for the first time?
Yeah, I think it was in the Chateau Marmont. Johnny was there, I was there, and Hunter was there. And Hunter is, I mean, he's a great hero of mine, but in reality he's a much more irritating human being. Because he's kind of the center of his universe, and once you step into it, you're a mere satellite, a tiny moon somewhere. He has to dominate everything. And I would sit quietly while he's going through Chivas Regal. I don't know what else he was. He was going through a variety of chemicals. But he's always brilliant. He just reached a point in his career where he was no longer as famous as he had been when he was younger, and he seemed to be demanding attention all the time. I think this is scene, is that Toby with the bald wig? We had to put a lot of sweat on it to try to blend it in. It's funny watching this again. I will probably discover all sorts of horrible mistakes that we made. And yes, that is the bald cap. Now, you've got to understand, Benicio and Johnny have two very different styles of acting. Johnny's very precise and very controlled. And Benicio he had gotten so deep into Gonzo, it was like he was permanently out of control, is what it always felt like. He was doing extraordinary things, but you didn't know how they would match to the previous shot we'd shot. So it became quite difficult for a while in the editing room, trying to make it work smoothly, and sometimes that was at the expense of some of the things Johnny was doing. But the end result, I think, is extraordinary because he's so powerful on screen and terrifying and so unpredictable, and that's what the character should be.
And this was your first opportunity to work with Johnny?
That was it.
And
so,
meeting him?
It's just, I mean, Johnny was a joy. We actually, I think, met at Cannes. He was sitting on the steps outside of a fine hotel, I think it might have been Winona Ryder, I'm not sure, or it could have been Kate Moss, or maybe it was 10 other girls, I don't remember. But Johnny was just so funny and intelligent and just all in all a great human being. And I loved what he had done in all of his previous films. There was such a vulnerability and a sensitivity in his characters. So yeah, I was happy to be able to be working with him. We just played the whole time because he knew what he was doing. I kind of knew what I was doing, and we would try to top each other. Later on in the film, you'll see we'll talk about topping one another.
I see. Now, the horizon is never straight. It's never horizontal in these shots.
Well, that was our theory. It's called, in filmmaking, it's called Dutching, when you tip the horizon. And we thought, as we were moving into this drug-induced world, and we would keep the camera always at an angle, so nothing ever was horizontal, nothing was ever flat, until the real drug sections later in, it starts flattening out. Now, Las Vegas is no longer that Las Vegas.
So this is the Mint, and that's a CGI shot?
Yes, that's a CGI shot we did. All we had was at that time some people on the ground that we spread around the place. But once we got into Vegas, we had a few entrances to casinos that we could shoot. This one was late at night, and we got in there for just a brief moment, and they couldn't believe what we were doing. We managed to stick this. Oh wait, I'm way ahead of myself. See, this is the problem with this film. It's very disorienting, and I'm talking about something that happened much later. So forget everything I said.
Okay.
I apologize. I will go home now. No, I won't. But coming up here is a moment that is not in the book, but is a result of my walking around the casinos in Vegas when we started this project. And the carpets seemed to be gigantic floral patterns, leaves and vines. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if the carpet suddenly came alive and started crawling up people's legs? It seemed to be the beginning for me of a good drug high.
And here's Catherine Helmond.
Catherine Hellman, who was my good luck charm for 3 movies, from Time Bandits, where she played the ogre's wife, to Brazil, where she played Jonathan Pryce's mother, to here, and where she gets to play a moray eel.
Yeah, and
Very exciting.
I love the way the pencil remains there even when she transforms.
I mean, Catherine was the most wonderful actress. She was so funny, so beautiful, and willing to try anything.
And you're stretching her face again.
Indeed. She probably had an actress who's had her face stretched on films more than any other actress in history.
No, we haven't done anything yet. Move!
I can handle this. This man suffers from a bad heart. But I have plenty of medicine. My name is Dr. Gonzo.
Benicio is so evil looking. There's something about it. We had a great time with the lighting. There was a lot of shadow, a lot of strange colors we used. And here we enter what will soon be the Lizard Lounge, full of lounge I can't even say the word, lounge lizards they are at this point. And it was one of those difficult ones because in the book, Ralph Steadman's drawings are wonderful. They're very wild and not realistic. So how do you do it? And we had a very limited budget, but we got a great effects designer who got to work, Rob Bottin, who had done The Thing and a few other famous movies. And he was just one of the people, there were many, who just wanted to be part of this project because it was such an important book for them as well. And we just went for it finally. There, the lizards started appearing. And there's the one moment I tried to do the transition was by a long tongue coming in. The blood is flowing on the floor. We are being very literal about what is written in the book. And we've got these peanuts or something in a bowl, which are suddenly changed into a bowl of maggots. And in comes the offending tongue. And there it is, Johnny's bald head. I thought it was a good entrance point to reveal what he's looking like now. And there are the maggots, and there's the tongue. And then we're into full reptile. And it just became great fun. We had a very limited number of reptile heads, so there's a lot of mirrors going on here. And we've multiplied things in post here. But it was, I think at the time, we were released, the same time Godzilla was released, we were counter-programming. And I said, 2 films with lizards. The difference is ours fuck. And it's just getting crazy. The camera now is really moving. I mean, we just keep it unsteady. There's no clear gravity. There's no ground. Until that shot. Now we calmed down for a moment. It was fun doing this because we were just playing. There's certain shots that we do very specifically. Other times we just played to see what we could do, to see how bizarre, distorted we could make the world. And of course, the Vietnam War, which was very much in the background of those times. And so, what better than to do the Vietnam War in a hotel suite? Keep it close.
And to channel it in through a TV set.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the war was very much on all of our minds during this period, and it seemed to be the betrayal of everything we thought America stood for. And
We saw some carpet bombing there.
yeah, well, that's me just being literal, having fun with carpet bombing. And we literally, on the carpet, we had some powder we put down and then poof, poof, just blew air at it. And that was our carpet bombing. It worked.
Now, this hotel room, was it a four-walled set?
Yes, we made
There's
this
a
whole
roof
thing.
there. There's a ceiling there as well.
There's ceiling, floor, walls, windows, the whole lot is there. And we built it, and luckily it was strongly built because in a short while, Benicio picks up a chair and throws it at Johnny. And luckily, the barrier withstood the blast of the chair.
Yeah, but with a four-walled set,
Yeah.
it's difficult to get the equipment and the people in and out. So who was in there while the shooting was taking place?
Well, the minimum, the camera crew and me, that was it. We kept it. Actors, we really keep things to a minimum. I don't like cluttering the place too much. But luckily, we've got wide-angle lenses, which give us a bigger looking room than it actually was. That's what's interesting about it.
Now, here's Craig Bierko.
Craig Bierko, who had become quite a big Broadway star at this point. And it's a wonderful over-the-top performance. It's shameless. It's great. He just steps into our world and grabs the moment. And we bleached his hair. And he's a very irritating looking and behaving human being in our world. Yeah. The stillness of Benicio, I just love. Craig's timing was perfect. But we had flashing lights outside the windows, throwing these different colors in. And we just kept playing. And these terrible colors on the wall. The wallpaper is a horrible color. And then we add green to it. It's almost vomit-producing. But for Benicio, this was such a huge leap because before this, he'd been in Usual Suspects. He'd always been thin and cool and very, controlled kind of character. And suddenly he's put on all this weight and he's dangerous. Here was a dawn shot. We had to shoot this at dawn because that's what the scene is about. And the red shark drives in. And we got there because we wanted the light to be perfect, but it had to be timed exactly at a moment when we did this wide shot of the car roaring in. And it was out about half a mile away from us. The camera's all ready. The sun's coming up. And so we say, action. And nothing happens. There's no car. There's nothing. Because somebody had forgotten to put gas in it. Ruined it, but still the moment is kind of there. But it was nice. We just set up this whole little area, and it worked. It's in some cases the sets are very simple. We buy this huge tent, put some tables in, put some people in there, and that's it.
And there's allusion to the war in Vietnam and several aspects to this sequence.
Constantly. I mean, that was sort of an underlying theme of the whole film. Everything was like war correspondence. It was the whole sense of the war back there and the madness of the war was kind of this. You get out there, this race, which is a ridiculous race, as you'll see in a moment, because the bikes take off, and within 2 seconds, the world is obliterated. You're in a war zone. You don't know what is going on. You don't know where you are. It's our low-budget apocalypse now moment. You didn't have to have a set, just a lot of Fuller's Earth in the air. It's very interesting. We're pushing more and more Fuller's Earth in these scenes. Each shot, we're just building it. And suddenly there's hardly any, we couldn't see what we were doing half the time.
So tell me about the dust. Did you have problems creating the right amount of dust?
Well, you just pump dust, and you never know if it's the right amount. And most of the time, you don't know what you've got on film until the next day. So in many ways, we were just shooting blind. But everything on this film, there was no time to go back and do another version, another take, a reshoot a scene. We just moved forward. I kept saying we are sharks, and we only can stay alive by moving forward, never resting. And yet, what we got is beautiful. You couldn't do it better than this. I mean, it's just the right balance. I can't remember how many takes we did before we got it right. But it's ridiculous to be out in the middle of the desert, a long way away from home base, with so much dust in the air that we could have just done it in our hotel suite, practically.
Could you say something about the book itself and your reaction to it when you read it for the first time?
I just thought it had captured the times right. I mean, like Hunter, I was somebody I believed in the American dream, like so many of in our generation, that we were doing something that was going to make the world a better place. We were going to change. We were going to fix the things that were wrong: civil rights, women's rights, gay rights, and a war. And it was very clear who the enemies were, in a sense. And so it focused us on these four things. And Hunter, in his approach to what the end of that time was about, was when the dream was broken, that reliving the madness is basically what he did, and the disappointment. And it's really, this book, I mean, I remember reading it just before I finally left America. So it made a lot of sense to me. It was very important. And but he had found a way of talking about the madness of America at that point in a very unique way. And with Dr. Johnson's opening line, become a beast if it's the only way to be a man in certain times, is what it's about. And so it seemed right that since the world has gone mad, you just let yourself be destroyed by drugs of your own choice. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping it's going to be applicable to the world we're living in now with Trump and Boris Johnson and Brexit. As our world is falling apart once again, maybe it's time to rejoin the world of Fear and Loathing.
Total control now.
We used back projection in this shot. We were just getting shots from old television shows where they had shot background plates, because a lot of those shows would just be done in the studio. And that's what's happening here. It's back projected. And we've got this car, a rocking device, and we're moving the camera. Everything is shifting, of course, try to make it feel like we're driving down the streets. And it works, and it's beautiful. And we're getting away with a lot of it because we're in an almost hallucinogenic state, or semi-hallucinogenic, so you can really push the elements. I think in some of these shots, the background, we were playing it backwards. Because it was going the wrong direction as far as we were concerned.
I see. But and it was from the TV show Vegas.
That's what it was. You got it. I'd forgotten that.
Now, we're not to take the book or the film too literally, are we?
No, it's a metaphor.
It's a metaphor.
It's a metaphor. Meta is such a nice beginning of a word, isn't it? What is a metaphor? I'm not sure what a meta is for, but we'll use it here. Now, the whole book, the world has become so literal about everything now. And I don't like films that are literal. There's a lot of symbolism in here. That's why I'm saying costumes, whatever they are, we're referring to other things. They're not just a coat on somebody. It has significance, a meaning. And that's kind of important. Later on, when we get to Bazooka Circus, it's very much that. Everything has a meaning. And one of the great things in my life, I got to dance with Debbie Reynolds many years ago. Carrie Fisher, her daughter was, Princess Leia was a good friend of mine. And we were on a very interesting boat trip. and Debbie was there, and there was a disco at night, and I danced with Debbie. Having been at a much younger age, when I was in college, out in Palm Springs with a bunch of campers, young kids, who happened to be the sons and daughters of Debbie's husband at that time, and they had a place in Vegas, in Palm Springs. And when they weren't there, we often went down there. And I remember bouncing on the bed that Debbie used long before I ever had a chance to put her in a film or dance with her.
And she recorded some lines for you here.
Yes. And I don't even know where it was done. It wasn't in my presence when she did them. She kind of phoned them in, but that was fine, because Carrie Fisher was at that point going out with a guy named Steve Nemeth, who was one of the producers on the film. So we had connections.
Stephen Nemeth. Now, Johnny agreed to be in the film on one of the 3 conditions. Tell me one of the third condition.
Well, Steve Nemeth had become more of a nemesis than a nemethist. And Johnny had a very deep dislike for Steve. And he said, I do not want that man on the set when I'm on the set. Never. And if he ever comes on the set when I'm on, I want in my contract that I will be able to whip his bare ass with a wire coat hanger. Those were the happy days.
No, another CG shot.
Yep. This was when I had an effects company called Prominent Features. And so we did all the effects of my films at that time. And these are all very good, and they sit in there very nicely, because we couldn't afford, because none of those signs exist anymore. We were actually replicating things, because old Vegas had vanished. And I think when we enter Bazooka Circus, this is it may be the Tropicana. I can't remember which one it was. And we put the big gorilla there, and we got a clown face, which we managed to get in just about half hour before the unit arrived. And we had it for a very brief moment, for a couple hours, is all we had to shoot this whole sequence. And
yeah, so you're outside a real casino.
That's it, with our clown face.
With the face.
But those are all the real lights going, and we had to keep the real casinoites away and quiet for a bit. But it was so wonderful. Johnny and Benicio, I was in hysterics. Their walk-in under the influence of ether was so brilliant. We couldn't stop laughing through this whole evening, but we were in and out, I think, in about an hour, which is amazing.
Drug for Las Vegas. In this town, they love a drunk. Fresh meat.
Throughout the film, the movement of his body is terrific.
Oh, it's like an acrobat at work or a dancer. It's so amazing. It's so controlled and wonderful. And then we have this little sequence in Bazooka. I had to do a circus act, so I thought, what would be better? Because there is a mention in the book of a Wolverine, but there's no mention of pregnant trapeze artists. So I thought, let's do a pregnant trapeze artist and another trapeze member with a huge mallet. Let's give birth to yes, in the space age, an astronaut. Boom. And we're still celebrating the 50th anniversary of man's walk on the moon. So you can see that Fear and Loathing is about now as much as it was then.
Could you talk about the design and the build of this set, which is in a studio?
Yeah, well, there's not really much of a set. Everything is sort of just black curtains everywhere. And then we just put a lot of lights in there. There are key, all these booths we built around on tables. And we built the carousel in there, which we'll get to in a moment. But it was basically just in a big black tent. Now there's Vern Troyer. This was my initial time to work with Vern, who at that point was the smallest man in the world. And we went on to do Dr. Parnassus together. Vern was one of those extraordinary people that were dealt a very bizarre hand, and he made life worthwhile. He was brilliant. He was so smart, and he took no prisoners. He was really quite a really special human being. These booths now were good fun to make. We've got orangutans in there pretending to be live human beings. There's Penn from Penn and Teller, who actually lives and works in Vegas. And it was just fun inventing booths. There's parts where there's throwing darts, which aren't darts. They're hypodermic needles at a junkie on a turntable. Where's he? Comes up somewhere. This was a chance. There he is, junkie on the spin. And those are hypodermics going towards him, ladies and gentlemen. This was hell. To me, this was one of the lowest levels of hell in the film. But in fact, we go deeper than anything Dante ever wrote, I think. And as you can see how angled everything is, it's twisted and turned, and nothing is still. Everything is. I just loved working on this carousel, trying to make the thing as hallucinogenic, brain damaging as possible. We're actually trying to put the audience through the experience of our two heroes. And we achieved that. I think for a lot of people, those who walked out in the middle of the film clearly couldn't take it. They weren't man or woman enough to get back into the 60s. There was a time I showed it, and behind me was Paul McGann from With Nail and I. And at the end, he was white-faced. He couldn't believe what was on screen. And
the Blue Danube Waltz comes up at one point in the sequence.
it's my homage to 2001.
Yeah.
There's a lot of little in-jokes there going on through the whole thing. I mean, that was part of the fun of the movie, was putting in things that a lot of people wouldn't understand, wouldn't realize what's going on. But it kept us entertained as we were working on it. The trick to me is always to try to create a world that I believe in when we're doing this. And the more we can have levels to it, the better, whether you're seeing the war in different ways, whether you realize it's the Divine Comedy in Las Vegas.
Did Nicola and his team enjoy filming on this?
Oh, this is all good fun. I mean, yes, he's got Steadicam going. I mean, I think wore Nicola down. This was the first time Nicola and I worked together. And when we started this project, or before Nicola was involved, some of the best cinematographers in the world wanting to be part of it, and I just wasn't sure until one day I got a videotape about a cinematographer who turns out to have only one eye. And I thought, a cyclops, that's what we need for this production. And Nicola, it was such an outrageous tape. Anybody bold enough to send a tape like he sent in, I said, I've got to work with this guy. And we've been working together ever since. This is the beginning, and it has continued for 20 years now. 20 more, yeah. Now, there's our Ku Klux Klan again, part of the civil rights comment. There's
But we're on a slope here, aren't we?
now this is what's interesting. The only way you can get people like Benicio to lean that far back, this is not possible. That is physically impossible. So what we did was built that whole set on an angle, and Johnny and Benicio had to walk at an angle through most of it, and Johnny had to continue that angle all the way through, so it appeared they were walking upright. So when Benicio does his fall backwards, this is...
And he's avoiding the central part of the carpet there, isn't he? He's just jumping.
This has just got fun. Once we'd established the carpets were dangerous. They were man-eating, possibly. Johnny's trying to avoid it. He's leaping for no. And this is stuff that just came on the day. It wasn't in the script. It's just we were all having such fun. We were inventing as we went along. But everybody was so clear and focused in what we were trying to do as an overall statement, that we could do this and survive. It's, I mean, Benicio, the way he was falling and throwing himself around is just terrifying, because he actually did hurt himself a lot, but he was so into the character, he was just there, focused and not aware of anything other than whatever it took to be as out of control and drugged, drunk, or whatever. This stuff. Again, the minute knives start coming into this film is worrisome. I mean, Johnny's got one there, and then Benicio gets even more terrifying. It's just, and we're shooting this stuff, and we're lighting it like a nightmare. This is truly nightmarish. I mean, Johnny's a sensible little knife, and suddenly this machete turns up.
He's a terrifying force.
Yeah. And it's just wonderful, because we didn't know where it was going. And at times it became worrisome, because I wasn't sure if Benicio really was in control of him, what he was doing. But that's great. Now here comes Cameron Diaz, who in many ways was almost the beginning of this project, because her manager I had dinner with her manager because I liked Cameron and we had met a few times. And he was the one that was talking about Fear and Loathing, and that it was about to be done. And there was a script out there. And that was actually the intro, my intro into the likelihood of doing it. And Cameron comes on for a day, and she just grabs the scene. She's wonderful, fearless. And what was most disturbing in this scene is Benicio with his knife, because it really, really was. I think Cameron was genuinely frightened. She had not experienced Benicio before. We stuck her and Benicio and Johnny and Craig in a very small space. And once he gets his knife out here, I actually sat there and I couldn't believe what he's doing, because his intensity is so pure. There's never a waver. And look, the way he used the cigarette. He's just staring. His eyes are scary. And the whole thing is very, very worrisome. I don't think anybody had to act during this scene. And look, the knife is there, and that feeling that Benicio is not really in control of his own movements was what is so powerful and wonderful. And that was my gag. I thought, we set up a scene that bizarre. I'm loving watching this film. I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, I actually do love this film. And having not seen it for a long time, I am amazed. And I can't actually believe that I was involved in the making of it. There was a very much younger Terry Gilliam who I'd like to meet one day.
So why does Duke rely on Gonzo so much if his behavior is so terrible?
Well, there you go. I'm not sure if when they started on this adventure, he knew his behavior would be so horrible. There's something about what we had decided, because Gonzo, we decided, since we were going to be pagan about this whole thing, and it was going to be the Divine Comedy, that he would be Virgil, the pagan guide, and Johnny would be the Christian with a sense of morality. And so you've got this wild pagan creature that the slightly more cowardly Duke can allow go crazy. And it's just whether he, in the end, can control this pagan primal monster. It's in a strange way, it's almost like a schizophrenic human being. It's almost as if they're one person, with one side that has a sense of morality, intelligence, and the other is just the basic primal beast that exists in all of us.
in making your films, you often associate or identify with the characters. I mean, how about these two? To what extent?
Well, I'm kind of like I suppose I'm like Duke. I'm cowardly like him, because although I appreciate the primalness of things, I never go there. It's like I've never taken any of the drugs we show in this movie. I mean, everybody assumed during my Python days that I was heavily into drugs. Not at all. I mean, and I did say at the end of this film, when we finished it, that I had to try acid, which I've never tried. And I've never done it yet. And 22 years later, whatever it is, I still haven't gotten around to it. Maybe it's just because I'm lazy, or maybe because I really fear that side of what would happen if I really let myself go. I remember the day when we shaved Johnny's head, and I came in and I said, "Wow." And he turns and says, "What do you think?" And I said, "John, you look like a fool." But it was just wonderful to see him. And as a friend, this is another, I won't name her name, but when she saw the movie, she said, "You're the first director ever to make Johnny Depp unfuckable." Now comes probably the most dangerous, out of control scene in the movie.
So he's wearing clothes.
He's wearing clothes, as one does
Yeah.
in a bath, because you don't want to catch a chill. And he's whatever, I can't remember what he's taken at this point, what drug he's on. But there it is. And it was very funny during the scene, because it was one of those, Johnny had just had it with Benicio. and Benicio, that's dangerous on that water, because there's all the faucets and taps. There's things in there. He's waving that knife around. And at the end of the day, he actually had damaged himself quite a bit, because it just was horrible. And I do, everything he's doing is totally believable. I don't for 1 minute think there's a man acting. I think the guy's real. That's what I find so extraordinary about both of their performances. They were both so into it. There's never that sense of fakery or trying to appear to be doing something. They are doing it.
And is the bathroom a four-wall? It's a four-wall set, isn't it?
Yep, we built that one so we could do anything we wanted. And now we got this is ad-libbing stuff, and suddenly we've got the great whale, the great white whale, even though Gonzo was sort of a brown whale. And suddenly we have a bit of Ahab. And that's what I love, that moment. Suddenly we grab the rod from the shower curtain, and it's a harpoon, and it's controlling this monster. It's either Ahab or it's St. Michael with a dragon. It's again about someone that is supposed to have some sort of control or power against a primal force. And this is just even watching it now, I find Benicio's movements are so surprising and so unpredictable and so terrifying. I think I'm going to have to watch this film again. This is not going to be enough. I want more. I want more. The pinkness of the bathroom, I just love. I mean, it's in the middle of all these horrible colors, purples, grays, flashing things. A little pink bathroom seems to be such a sweet place to do this horrible moment.
And it's a reference for what comes later as well.
Of course, it is. You think water's taking over the world? No, it's going to get worse. More food, more horrible things. That was the joy of kind of judging as we were going, because we didn't shoot in order, to try to judge the amount of destruction we would create in each set as we went on. So the whole thing has to build and get worse and worse.
And the
I've
song.
never,
Oh,
sorry,
after you.
I've never seen Benicio do anything like this in the rest of his career, before or after. It's just amazing.
And White Rabbit suggests Alice in Wonderland.
Of course, there's always Alice there waiting. But that was all in the book. Hunter gave us all of those, most of those songs. Now here comes the moment when, thank God, we built that little grid on there separating the room, those wooden bits. Because off,
No.
and here he comes. Okay, we're slightly protected, but what we didn't expect was that he would throw that chair. Now, if that stuff hadn't been as strong as it was, we would be out of the other actor. He would have been down and out.
What I should do, goddammit, is call the fucking police!
But I can see why at the time people were so bothered by this film. Sensible, decent people to come in and see this disarray, this filth, this uncontrollable filmmaking, it seems to be.
I just wanted to cut a little in your forehead.
Get back in the tub.
Well, I've got a quote from you. It says, "When we were making the film, Johnny and I kept joking about what a disgusting, dangerous film we were producing, and that luckily I lived outside the US, so they would come looking for him. About how the decent people of this great country had spent 25 years dredging themselves up from those appalling times, and then along comes this shit, which undermines everything that's good and true about America."
Oh, that's what we felt. That's great. I'm glad it's down somewhere now, those words. Because it was, how far can we go? How far can we push this whole thing and still not alienate the entire country? I mean, again, so much of this, suddenly that bullhorn became a really wonderful thing. And using it like this, these were things that weren't scripted. They were as we were in that scene. What else can we do? And once we had a prop, we never let it go because it might become useful later.
Ignore the nightmare in the bathroom.
Now, this is good fun doing this because it was nice to see what the old white noise pattern can do when it's against the wall. And then we had that bed on a little riser and we could start flying. And there's the Jefferson Airplane performing at the Matrix.
And Layla Nabulsi is one of the performers.
She's playing, come on, who was the lead singer?
Grace Slick.
Grace Slick, yes. Layla is playing Grace Slick. Now, this was a very difficult day of shooting because we had Hunter on the set this day. Because Hunter wanted to be part of it, and I thought it was important to have him there. And what happens here is Johnny, as Hunter, walks along, and what does he see at a neighboring table? But himself in the future, the old Hunter Thompson. And he goes on. Now, the problem was we had 60 extras. We were running late that day. Hunter was there, and we wanted him on the set to do what he did. And he decided, no, he's not going on the set. He said, I wasn't sitting there in the Matrix. I was sitting at the edge, a journalist observing from the outside, not in the middle of the scene. And he wouldn't go out there, 60 extras waiting, the crew in overtime. And it ended, Layla and I and Johnny were surrounding Hunter like three sheepdogs, trying to get this recalcitrant sheep into the corral. We finally did it by getting the best-looking extra to sit down there, and he then went out there. And for several takes, he completely ignored Johnny going past because he was too busy chatting up the girl. We got finally on one take. This is I love this. That reaction is so brilliant. And that's P, or flee. How about flee?
Flee.
Let's flee. Please. So you put them together. It was Flea, Johnny's friend from Red Hot Chili Peppers, coming in for a day. And I just love this moment. The reaction, just that flick of the eye. It's so perfect. And the worst thing is, I'm trying to remember the actor's name. He was there for one day, and he's brilliant. And he should have gone on to be a great star. What happened? These are the questions never to be answered.
It seems like a lifetime.
And now comes the biggest moment in Hunter's book. This speech, or this bit of writing, The Wave, he wrote. And when Alex Cox was briefly the director, Alex and Todd, his co-writer, came up to Woody Creek to see Hunter. And it's a very interesting bit of film that is around the YouTube somewhere, of Alex talking to Hunter. Because Alex's idea of this was not to show what was really happening, but doing a cartoon of Duke riding a surfboard on a wave. And Hunter was so appalled by this idea. A cartoon? You're turning one of my finest bits of writing into a cartoon? He chases Alex out of his house. And so we treaded very carefully. I just wanted to show the world that was there, the joy, the community, just the happiness that was the time, despite, there'd be one weekend like this, the next would be a police riot going on, and it was an extraordinary time to be there. And
You were there.
I was there in the middle of all that stuff. And this was so interesting because we don't do anything. We show the time, and Johnny's doing nothing but just looking. And it was very moving when we shot it. At the end, it's just like, basically, I remember I just grabbed him and gave him a hug because it was like he had lost something in the course of just that moment.
And it establishes Duke as a reflective and moral character, doesn't it?
That was very important, yes. There is substance to this human being. And we're back into madness for that. It's the balance of trying to get the script right, where we could show these aspects of it. Because it wasn't the script that Alex and Todd had written, I hated, because it was just chaos. It was just madness for madness' sake and nothing more. You didn't understand why these people were behaving as they were in the film. And it came from this loss, this feeling of betrayal, in a sense, by history. This scene, again, I loved because we had lots of fun with this. The Z on his forehead. That's not actually in the script. So much of this stuff was ad-libbed on the day. The script is what the voiceover is saying. And it was, again, it's Johnny and me just laughing a lot, saying, let's do this. I mean, Nicola, we all were involved in this process. This was done out. There's an airport outside Arizona where all these airplanes are junked. And so we had a junked airplane. It was all we had to work with.
All these horrible realities began to dawn on me.
Now, there's Phil, the first assistant director. His big moment. Phil.
And that's Philip Patterson.
Phil Patterson.
And he's famous for his appearance in Lost in Lament.
Of course, where he names me Captain Chaos, which has stuck for years since then. It's all Phil's fault.
Maybe nobody. How would Horatio Alger have handled this situation?
We're back at the Ambassador Hotel now again. We keep coming back to these same bits. But what's so interesting is they were all shot in the course of a couple days in L.A. After we'd been to Vegas. Or was it before? I can't remember. But it all still holds together beautifully.
Now, it was only a matter of slipping the noose. Hey, wait, here, take this, all right.
And again, here's an actor coming up that I can't remember his name. It's been so long ago. And he's so good with his teeth and his face, his eyes. He's just, again, this shot. All this is. This is one of those days you just do it in one shot. There's no time to do anything else. And I think maybe we only did one, maybe two takes, and it's just boom. In the whole film, there's seldom that we go over 4 or 5 takes. We didn't have time or money. We just had to keep working fast.
Dr. Gonzo's signature on the telegram from Los Angeles when we knew he was right here in the hotel. Right.
And Julie Weiss, who's the costume designer, every time I look at this, every moment is wonderful. His yellow blazer is so wonderful, playing against those lights which were there at the hotel. No, Julie and I had a great time because she's a very intelligent, wonderful, free-spirited woman and very political. And so we were just putting all these little things in there that were either about the time or political statements, which I'm only remembering now as we're watching it. Look at that. That is a great moment, just a physicality of the two. Because there was no judder like that. The camera, everything is a little dance right there in just the space of 5 seconds.
I've got to get to the race.
You know, but there's no hurry. The race is over.
Not for me.
Well, let's have lunch.
Radio, man.
And now we escape Vegas, and a lot of people thought, that's the end of the film.
It's an intermission.
It is our intermission indeed. I love the fact there's no escape from this hell. That's what the point we're making. And I would have to look at the book and the script again to remind myself how much we pushed scenes around from their location in the book, trying to make this, that we're getting out. We've escaped the nightmare. It's back to normality, and there's Dylan in the background. They couldn't be more appropriate. I mean, Ray Cooper and I did the soundtrack, the musical soundtrack. Originally, Ray was just going to give me a couple bits of score that he would do. But then we started at it, and I just loved going back to the music of the time and finding things that were so right or wrong, depending on how you look at it. And I love the album. I assume the album still must be available out there because when I listen to it, I can't believe we actually pulled this thing off.
Yeah, well, it's about to be released on vinyl for the first time, I understand.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, I'm glad you're here, Phil.
I saw that a few weeks ago.
Well, I think it's a great musical soundtrack of the film because the film is there. And Gary Busey, who I've always loved, and here he is. And we had just got him out, I think, that day. He just arrived the day before, and the police had taken him in because apparently he had had too much fun on the plane coming over.
I want to know. Let me see your license.
He's such a great actor because, again, he surprises me all the time. He's so real. And
how did he get involved?
I asked him, it was there, do you know more than I do on this, how he got involved? I just always liked Gary Busey. So let's just see if we can. I was able to get a lot of people, Harry Dean Stanton, all these people just wanted to be part of this thing. And so it was very easy. I just send out the word, and there they were.
Yeah, I know. I'm guilty. I understand that.
And this is a bit of dialogue that I kind of added. It's not quite what the book does, because the following scene is Hunter Road. I felt I'd been raped, so I thought we ought to build it up a little bit so you really feel it.
That's not gonna help me. I've been awake for too long, 3 or 4 nights maybe. Can't remember. I go to sleep now. I'm dead for 20 hours.
What are you carrying 2 cases of soap for, son?
It's Gary is really intimidating because the pauses, the voice is never threatening. It's just there. The way he drops it.
As of noon, is that I apprehended you for
We see some cable there on the ground. He's walking around some
Yeah,
cable.
we had to have all this cable so we could get the sound. And there you go. The truth of the matter has been revealed. It probably ruins the scene for everybody watching right now.
and take a long
Now, the final line wasn't in your and Tony's script.
No, but I thought this is how we have to do it. So we got into this scene, and I said, Gary, deep down, you're a very lonely man, and sitting out in this desert, you're gay. And the way he plays it, it really actually disturbed Johnny too, because it's so good.
excellent seafood. You know, I'm thinking a guy your kind of mind ought to try the land crab. Excellent seafood.
Land crab. All right. Why not? Thanks for the tip. Oh,
Look at me in the eyes.
everything all right?
May I have a little kiss before you go? I'm very lonely here.
Oh, see, I needed something to kick that moment of the car, boom, roaring away, which is stolen from Lolita, Stanley Kubrick's Lolita. That shot, or something like the way I remember that shot. There's a moment, and it's, and Hunter hated that because. No, he wouldn't. But I just thought you needed something like that. And Gary does that scene. That scene, there's such tension in that scene because we don't quite understand. Something is going on here that isn't what is being said. And that's why I thought that makes that scene really good. And then you kick it with a nice punchline like that. And here's Toby back.
Jesus, it's him. Oh, my God! That's it! Come on, you fucking bastards! Oh, God, oh, God, oh, God, I've got to go.
Oh, and we get to see Ralph's T-shirt, which I still got at home. This junkyard was great because one of the things at this point in the history of motion picture making is they had banned the use of tires as using burning tires as black smoke. They decided this is going to kill everybody. And we're out in the middle of nowhere. And I said, who's going to know? I think there's a statute of limitations on this stuff, I hope, by the time this comes out. Because it's really hard to get black smoke as good as that. And there's Nixon, these demon horns.
Never mind, it's all a big joke. I'm actually...
But this is nice when you get a set that's just, you don't have to do anything except put phone booth.
Is that the backward shot, that one?
Yeah, you're right. This is good. Thank you. Yeah, we shot that in reverse. What you see there is exactly the opposite of what we shot, but it worked better in reverse. And I'm very happy, and I use it a lot in films. I'll suddenly just take a shot that we shot and put it in reverse and see what happens. Surprise, surprise. And that was a nice day out because we had run out of time that day. The day was effectively over, and we needed that shot of him out there with his pistol shooting. And we had this location that was some distance away from where we were. And Phil Patterson said, nope, we won't be able to get that shot today, Terry. And I said, what? So Nicola and I and a couple of the people who we could influence, and Johnny, we got in a couple of cars. We roared out there. We humped our stuff up. You know, I think I was carrying the tripods or cameras, I can't remember which, up onto that location and got that shot despite Phil Patterson, Mr. Chaos accuser. Now we're at this is actually Santa Anita or Hollywood Racetrack. It's the entrance to the racetrack. It's a beautiful building, Art Deco building.
But in L.A.?
In L.A. We're back in L.A. now.
We've got Frank Sinatra.
Yep. We're back in Vegas, and if you're in Vegas with a police convention, you got to have Frank, it seems to me.
But Sinatra died the day before the Cannes premiere, I remember.
Was there a connection? Did he not want to be associated with his film in any way?
don't know.
Who knows?
He had to die before the premiere.
And this is wonderful. People, the amount of powdered milk that we used on Johnny's milk. I said at one point, for all the cocaine use, was all powdered milk. And I said, we've used so much powdered milk, Johnny is ready to breastfeed.
I'm a police chief from Michigan.
Now we've got your brother there.
My brother, yes, in the blue blazer, and he's talking to Ellen Barkin, who we don't see till much later in the film. But Ellen was there and getting bored, so I just kept putting her in the background of shots just to keep her occupied. She's fantastic. Well, we get to the North Star, we can talk.
Yeah.
And come on.
We've already paid.
Chris Maloney.
Chris Maloney, who went on to become quite famous in a detective series on TV, was in 12 Monkeys before. He plays a detective there for one scene with Madeline Stowe, and he was so wonderful. I said, we've got to work together again. And so he comes in, and he's one of the best gays I've seen on film. I mean, he is so wonderful and funny. And I love it when you get a great actor like that who's basically known as a serious actor and has this incredible timing and just a complete commitment to the character.
So fuck you, officer. I'm in charge.
Oh, that's beautiful, beautiful stuff. And again, I mean, Julie's costume, look at the work on this. It's just spectacular.
Kind of like convertible there? Yeah, maybe somebody could bring it to the room for me. Oh, yeah. Let me get a quarter of wild turkey, 2 fifths of Bacardi, ice room, and let's see.
You just calm down.
Shit, let's try some lime chunks. What do you think?
Sick of your hysterics.
I say okay.
A moment of power for Sven. It's good to see. Again, I love this scene. It just the marriage is about to fall apart as a result of Duke. And again, as far as I remember, in the books, Sven isn't gay, as far as I know. But it just seemed, this is great. We can take this scene and give a guy, not just because he's got a lowly position, but suddenly on every level he's given a chance to have power. And that seemed important. Again, we built all this, and that carpet is, I'm so pleased with that carpet. And we're back into pink again now. It's very important.
And was there a meaning behind the pink?
Well, I don't know. I just thought it was a wonderful contrast to what's going on and what will happen. It's such a sweet little innocent color. And it's... And here we go. And I do think here... what's his name? What's the guy playing Gonzo?
Benicio.
Thank you very much. It's great. Look at it. We stuck that around him, and he looks like some pasha, some sultan, and he's somewhere got a harem stuck away. And there's this one young, vulnerable girl who dreams. And Christina was wonderful.
Right?
I do these from TV.
Really?
Montana.
What's the name of that town? Montana. Just to give these portraits to Barbara.
This scene really was hated by many people. The pedophilia, the young girl, the victim. But you have to do this. This is part of the story. And again, there's Duke showing, appalled by this situation, but his approach to solving the situation appalled the editress of the LA Times arts section who wouldn't allow the film to be written about in the paper at all. No publicity, nothing, because she was so offended because she didn't understand what the scene is about. And that's what bothers me about people who can't get beyond literalism. When you're doing anything sardonic, ironic, it's what you're doing. And the point of the next scene is Duke pushing Gonzo to a point that even Gonzo is appalled by what is being suggested. And to not understand that, where they're saying the words that were said are so horrible, we will not let our readers even see a film with words like that. And when the word is the crime and not the intention, I get really angry. And that's the world we're living in right now, where the word is the crime, not the intention of the word. So forget it. I guess the things that made me angry then make me even more angry now, because PC has become even more powerful than it was then.
And Johnny went into a bit of pig Latin there as well. It was not in the script.
It's not in the script. No, but this is the fun when we are having fun. To suddenly say, no, we're talking Igpe Atenle, and nobody will know what we're saying. It is so childish and ridiculous.
Pictures of Jesus all over the room, and then turn these fucking pigs loose on her. Oh, she's strong, man. She'll hold her own.
No, Alex and Todd had written a script, and you started again with Tony Grisoni.
Indeed.
Can you talk about the process of putting the script together?
Well, there was the book. It was like, forget what Alex and Todd did. There's the book. So it became, we spent 8 days of Gonzo-like script writing. 8 days. We made some very fast decisions. Okay, bam, bam, bam. This is the structure. This is the underlying shape of it. We put this in, we put that in, we don't put that in. And the one scene that is in the film is the North Star Cafe at the end with Ellen Barkin. That had never been in any preceding script I'd ever read, because it's very different than the rest of the film. It's a very disturbing moment because there's late at night, two maniacs enter with one's got a knife and a woman on her own. That just to me felt that's an important scene. It's a moment when Gonzo goes over the line. There's got to be a moment when he goes too far in his primal behavior, and Duke has got to make a decision. That's if he's going to have any morality at all. And so we were just dealing with all this, and we wrote very fast. Use this, use that, don't put in. And 8 days finished, and we thought, we've done it. We've done something just like the book. In no time, we've created a masterpiece. And then we went our separate ways, and we both sat down to read the script. And a couple of days later, we called each other and said, it's utter crap. It's terrible. And so we then sat down, and in, again, another 2 days, we whipped it into shape. And what we ended up with was done that quickly. And it seemed to be important. You don't want to over intellectualize anything. You don't want to overthink it. It's got to be reaction immediately and instincts. Boom, boom, boom. Now we got a structure. Let's go. And that was it. As simple as that. And then the problems that created later with the Writers Guild is something else, which we don't need to go in now, or do we? When do we want to go into that?
Well, we've got yummy.
It was the most ridiculous song to put in over this scene, but it just made me laugh, and it ends beautifully. I mean, this ridiculous situation, and I sometimes work backwards, and how it ended was, I think, probably the reason I chose it over going to the chapel was my original thought was sort of just like, what do you do? We got this ridiculous Vegas chapel. So going to the chapel and then I bumped into yummy, 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 and I thought, this makes me laugh more because it's so not on the nose. But again, look at these moves from Johnny. They're just so brilliant, timed, and so silkily smooth. And then, of course, we've got to have another marriage going on. And Yummy, Yummy, Yummy ends with vomit. Some people felt this was too much. They thought, we've ruined the film. You're actually seeing him vomit. You're seeing the stuff dripping from his mouth. But that's the world we're in. Why should we pretend it's a tidier world, especially with what is about to come? It's just, if you can get through the vomiting, you can get through everything else we're going to throw at the. But people, I still think it's funny. I wish I'd recorded more screenings of the film when it first came out and people's initial reactions, because they were so appalled. So many people just hated it. And oh God, look at those faces.
So this is the DA's meeting, which is light blue.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember why we went for that. It just seemed there was something. Well, we've got a projector, so it's projecting. So we're actually in this sort of blue mode. The room is very golden and every other color but blue. But there was something sickly about this. And Michael Jeter, who I worked with in Fisher King, is breathtaking. He was just there for this one scene, but boy, he makes it sing. But this is also such a change from the vomit and the warm colors and everything. Suddenly we go into this kind of sterilized, sanitized place where decent police. First time he looks at the camera, that was to me a great moment, breaking the fourth wall. I just loved it. I only did it once before, and that was in Munchausen when Uma Thurman, when she's naked as Venus, looks right at the camera. All you boys that are watching. And I just thought, let's do it here. It's a great, lovely moment. I think now you see so many people looking at the camera in films. They use it a lot now. But I just think if it's used really sparingly like that, it's a real punch.
I read that Nicola had this idea of suggesting underwater with the blue. Does that ring a bell?
That ring a bell. Yeah. We've got to blame Nicola for something here. I mean, yeah, we were having such fun underwater. Yes, I don't remember why that was important, but I liked the idea. It seemed another bizarre thought. Because we were always just trying to make sure that everything was kind of special, everything was unique, everything had either disoriented you or threw you into a different mood. And it was a brilliant idea.
Do you think the anthropologist Margaret Mead's strange behavior of late could be explained by...
The audience looks progressively more and more grotesque.
Yep. We hated the cops, despite the fact my brother was an LA cop in reality. No, but it's interesting because they become very grotesque looking with nothing other than the way we're using the camera. We didn't need to make lizard heads for them. Again, a lot is the casting of the people we chose and what faces we stick there. They're all very fleshy people.
Gonzo's disappeared again.
He's once again. It's always Duke is kind of left on his own because he's always abandoned. It's like he's being tested again and again. He cannot trust his friend. I love this. And this is a real film. And then, of course, and yes, us being literal and not metaphorical for a moment.
I love that.
And then it gets worse. I mean, suddenly it is like the Lizard Lounge. The overweight ones are now getting more and more excited by all this talk of dope and semen and drugs. This is actually the room that Robert Kennedy gave his last speech in. And he left and went into the kitchen and never came out. The set dresser on the film, Nancy Haig, did so much of the detail in here. She was like the other production designer. She almost should have the same credit as Alex. She really understood the weirdness of what we were playing with and had a great sense of humor. Set dressers never get the credit they deserve. But, I mean, the choice of wallpapers Alex is doing, everything is ooh, it's just slightly out of control. It's disturbing. And we started stacking TVs up. They began to take over the world.
We assume that the TVs have been stolen from other rooms.
Yeah, because you got to keep in touch with whatever is going on. And this was a very simple set. We just built the cage and those towering things. And this is like the scale of it. There's Harry Dean, who came in for the one day. And again, he was a friend of Hunter. And again, when you've got a film that has affected so many people, and they're all really interesting, and they want to be part, we're the beneficiaries. The film's the beneficiary of it. And I love this. We do this whole in one shot. We just keep it going. And there's Johnny foreground packing, and there's Benicio in the background doing whatever he's about to do or not. Just keep it. Please don't cut, Terry. Just keep one shot going. It's the longest shot in the film, I think. Oh, I cut. Oh, I cheated. I lied. We get back to that shot later.
I advise you to take a hit out of the little brown bottle.
There we are. It's always very dangerous to try to do it all in one shot because in the end, in the editing room, it's too long. So luckily, I did do coverage. I've forgotten I cheated and played it safe.
What is this shit?
And we enter the world of adrenochrome.
A fictional drug.
A fictional drug that so many people, after seeing the film, said, yeah, I tried it. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. Because we were giving fake cinema or fake history and people before fake news. But it's extraordinary how people will believe themselves that they had taken this drug that was complete fiction, complete invention of Hunter's. Now we're back to our wide shot. Whew, God, I feel better already.
Now, Terry, during post-production, the Writers Guild decided that the script credit should go to Alex Cox and Todd Davis. What was your reaction to that?
I said, this is not going to be allowed. But the Writers Guild makes these decisions, and apparently there's no appeal. It's like a star chamber. You don't even know who made these decisions. But I bumped into a lawyer who had been involved in these things before, and we decided to make a lot of noise. And Tony and I, with the help of this lawyer, we wrote our whole protest against their decision. We were lucky because, yes, Alex and Todd had written a script, but we found out there had been an earlier script that had been written for the same production company. And suddenly their script lost a lot of points because of that. And because it's about the same book and they're going to have the same scenes in anyway if you're going to do the book. I said, this is nonsense. But because of this previous script, we actually got the Writers Guild to overturn their decision. And so rather than a film written by Alex Cox and Todd whatever, it was a film written by Tony Grisoni and Terry Gilliam, and the second billing was Alex and Todd, even though they had nothing to do with the script. So there is justice in the world occasionally. The two of them are both breathtaking at this moment to me. What I love is the timing from both of them is wonderful, and they're paying no attention to each other. It's like the two people are in two different films, and it actually felt like that on the day, because I had no idea what Benicio was going to be doing that back there, nor did Johnny. But somewhere instinctively, they're working together on some level. And now... and that purple in there with the pink and then the orange and the golden colors is just,
The lighting is changing.
Yep, little by little it's going darker and weirder. And the things, again, we're floating. We start floating.
And he's got an Egyptian thing going on there.
Yep, we're back into Middle East, whether it's a pasha with a harem or it's going to be Egyptian. And not only does the camera float, but somewhere in here, so too does the bed.
The guy didn't have any cash to pay me. He offered me human.
We've got this terrible 50s film with a giant tarantula in the background going on.
Told him I'd just as soon have an ounce or so of pure adrenochrome. Or maybe just a fresh adrenaline gland to chew on.
I mean, this is where Nicola is brilliant because we're doing, these are all separate shot, not in sequences all, but the camera starts this movement and it becomes just, everything starts fluid, getting stranger.
And Gonzo's taking control.
Total.
Why should I fuck with children, he said.
And the idea, I mean, I can't remember if it was Benito's idea of using the knife to give him the cocaine. And I just thought we were shooting. It's just dangerous. Him with Benito and a knife was so terrifying. But he did know what he was doing. And look at all that. We get down to...
And Ray Cooper's providing the music.
Yeah, this is... Ray originally was just supposed to be doing percussion, which he then he brought in a very famous Japanese rock star named Hote. And Hote and Ray started doing all this stuff. And it gets quite wonderful, painful. And then now comes the special effects. And now we got the bed moving. I can't even tell anymore. I just wanted to go totally pagan. Now the bed is going. Now the whole thing is coming apart. The camera's going upside down. There's no end to what we're going to do. And we've got these contact lenses in, so his eyes, Gonzo's eyes, are demon eyes.
And at some point, Duke gets contact lenses as well.
Yeah.
Just
now.
Yeah.
Jesus, that stuff got right on top of you, didn't it? Look at your face. You're about to explode.
And now the room. The room has become very big, and it's not just wide-angle lenses, folks. We had another version of the room that was twice as big as the original one.
In the pool right now, you'll sink like a goddamn stone. You took too much, man. You took too much, too much. You get brain bubbles, strokes, aneurysms. You'll just wither up and die.
And continue killing innocent people.
Allowed the last hopes for peace and freedom of me.
And here's our fine, wonderful president.
To you, the great silent majority. Sacrifice.
And this is Hote on guitar doing his Jimi Hendrix version of the American.
And Nixon was never president while you were there. So you always saw Nixon from afar, didn't you?
Yes, how did you know? No, can that be true? When Martin Luther King did the huge Million Man March in Washington, D.C., was Nixon had to be president then, didn't he?
Oh.
Because I was there. I was at the great historical moment.
I see. And Nixon was president at that time.
So I believe. So wherever you're getting your information, Phil, most of it's correct, but occasionally we catch you up. Now, this was one of those things. Where do we go from here? How much do we destroy the room? That was important, but I felt we had to make another leap. And the morning of this day, I came in, Johnny, have you ever thought of just wearing one of our reptile tails? And I got Johnny to strap it on. I said, yeah, that looks good. And he said, well, I've been thinking about what we should be doing this scene. I think we should tape the microphone to my head and the tape recorder. So I said, we'll do both. And it just seemed to be the right thing to do. And it was great fun just destroying that room, our own set. just, you couldn't do it. You actually have to do more than what it feels like on film to make it really, make the camera really read it.
That had dried to a hard yellow crust. These were not the hoof prints of your normal God-fearing junkie.
But it was like that moment. I hated the lizard lounge tails. We never really got to see them properly, so this was a chance we could take advantage of something we'd spent some money on.
Ugh. Grim memories and bad flashbacks. Get a grip. Maintain. How many nights and weird mornings had this shit been going on?
And I thought, yes, this is good. A murdered woman somehow. But now it's bottom of a pig with high heels. And I mean, when you've got nothing better to do than be as gross as possible, and then actually end up with a gun in the toilet, I thought, now we're building into something really bad.
Shit, that's me.
And I can see why decent, God-fearing people hated this. And like that moment, I mean, because we don't see the moment when the maid enters the room and Gonzo jumps her. It's in the background. I don't know why we decided to do that way, because I really think it's brilliant.
I know you're the cops, but I thought you were just there for that convention. I swear, all I wanted to do was clean up the room.
And by now, we've got lipstick on Johnny. Maybe this is the beginning of Captain Jack wearing a lot of makeup. And I believe there's eye makeup as well, everything. Just looking at those faces of the two of them with their hair and everything, it's hard to remember how we went that far. But again, we had the freedom. I mean, Universal were involved, but had two big stars. And the studio stayed a long way away from this thing. So we just did what we wanted to do.
But they were confident with the picture.
Foolishly, they were they were overconfident because they didn't handle it properly at all. They thought, oh, we got Johnny Depp, we got Benicio and Del Toro, boom, we got a famous book. But you've got to sell it properly, which they didn't. The trailer that was out there was like two wacky guys on a wild weekend in Las Vegas. And that's not what the film is about at all. And they released it during the summer break in the colleges. This was the audience, the real audience as far as I was concerned, the college audiences, because they would know the book. And what you don't do is release a film that has a college audience in the middle of the summer, because they're all done at Fort Lauderdale doing wet T-shirt contests. You want to do it while they're in session, because all it takes is one or two people to see a film and like it, and word spreads like wildfire on a campus. But things never work out the way you would like them to.
Terrible gibberish. Splintered memories looming up out of the time fog.
Could you tell me about the orangutan?
Oh, the orangutan was probably the most romantic moment I had on the film. We all love the orangutan. And it was horrible because Johnny, I think the orangutan had fallen in love with Johnny and was so happy when Johnny was around. And the rest of us couldn't get a look in after a while. But there's something about these are incredibly intelligent creatures, and they've got such a great spirit. You just don't want to kiss them. They've got the worst teeth and worst breath on the planet. But they're incredibly powerful. And he was so sweet, and he'd sort of grab my arm occasionally, and he would squeeze it a bit tighter than I thought was comfortable. And he just knew he could break my arm in a snap, no problem. And this is just senseless madness is what's going on here.
They're destroying coconuts on the Cadillac.
Is there a connection between Holy Grail? I don't know. We just. I can't remember if in the book mentioned coconuts or not. But this is really at the heart of it, the anti-materialism that is at the heart of all this. All these great, beautiful cars, a Cadillac convertible being destroyed. And even anti-Semitism creeped in there. I don't know. I didn't realize there's anybody in that crowd that was particularly Jewish. It was no holds barred. And I kind of miss those times because there was a lot of collateral damage, but there was also something pure and true. That's why I loved that book. And Hunter managed to capture it, and I didn't have to do it in real life. I didn't have to take acid. I didn't have to be involved with this necessarily. But there was joy in irritating decent people. Look at that. Those people were our parents, the products of the 50s, who were still alive in the 60s. And this is, again, a brutal, ugly moment. But if you don't see what it's about, and a lot of people didn't, there was this 15-year-old kid who, his parents, when he saw the film, said, why all this sex, drug, and rock and roll? What is it? It's awful. And he actually said that what he loved about it, it wasn't hypocritical, it was honest. And I think that's what we're trying to say with this film. And it's brutal. But if you don't have a sense of humor, it probably is a nightmare to watch. We managed to get a close-up of our hypodermic needles there that weren't so weren't so clear when we had shot the earlier scene. Again, knives, blood, or the ketchup. Who knows?
But a really massive crime often slips by unrecognized.
So here we are.
Now we come to the Night Star Cafe, is it?
North Star.
North Star, sorry, yeah. We had one night to shoot this whole thing inside out, and there were signs of Vegas that are really ugly, and this represented much of it.
No hassles, no talk.
And this is a real cafe inside.
Yeah, we used a real place, and the problem is if you watch carefully during the sequence, you'll see the background sky outside getting lighter, which was our big problem. We had a very limited time. And there's Ellen, and she's now dark-haired. And we actually expanded her rear end. We just had to really make this girl who's been through it all, seen everything, but not what's about to happen.
He did it very casually, but I knew that our peace was about to be shattered.
Again, Benicio in this scene was quite extraordinary. He was more violent than anything before, more cruel, more brutal, more dangerous.
The napkin.
Don't give me that bullshit. I know what that means, you fat goddamn pimp bastard.
That's the name of a horse I used to own, ma'am. What's wrong with you?
The question mark was emphasized.
You listen to me, you son of a bitch. I gotta take a lot of shit in this place, but I don't have to take it off no spit pimp.
Well, anybody that knows anything knows that.
It's Benicio's ability to just take his time. The three of them are just brilliant. I mean, this is one of my favorite scenes because I find the tension is really painful, and each of them, the three, are just brilliant.
I'm gonna call the cops.
And why this was left out of all the other scripts was it's too disturbing. And I think everybody else who tried to make the film was trying to keep it all a bit more lighthearted. And I never felt the book was lighthearted. I felt the book was passionate and it was angry. And if you don't go all the way down that road, what's the point of making it? And for me, again, as I said earlier, it's critical. This is the moment where he crosses the line. He goes too far. And if there's any morality in Duke, he's got to do something. And it's, and Johnny's just like pretending none of this is happening. He's always involved in something else. This is not really happening. And now the moment with this pie was a big argument came up because Benicio wanted to push it into her face. And I didn't want I just thought that's just too cheap. And yet, because he wanted to do it, he was determined to make it work. And he does. Because even when we shot the take, I wasn't sure that he wasn't just going to push it right in her face. And Ellen was worried about that. We were all, is he good at what's happening? And it's almost like he's leaning back and it's going to go bang. And of course he doesn't. And everything in it is good. And we're getting to the moment of Duke's, I wouldn't say not a redemption, but his only moment of sacrificing a little self to admit there was a wrong having been done. And it's good. His look to her is great. And one of the things that Johnny said that night is that Hunter would never let any excess food go to waste. And so this is what we did. And he concentrates, he takes his food, and then shows what a good guy he is, a decent man, and sacrifices that food and apologizes. That's his moment of apology. And I think it's wonderful. And it's all a product of, getting the right people. We're all in there. We're putting this thing together. And we just had one night get it all exterior and interior. And we did it. And I really feel proud of that scene. And it's beautiful.
Can you tell me about Hunter's reaction to the picture?
Well, it took ages to get Hunter to actually see the film. Johnny and I, we were very worried about his reaction to it. What was it going to be? And I kept setting up these different screenings. And Hunter, then at the last moment, wouldn't be able to make it. Because it turned out he was as worried about what his reaction would be to the film. And because, he was a friend by that point. That was never in the film. Christine reappearing. And that was never in the book. I mean, it's in the film. Sorry, I said the wrong. And but I thought that was important. One of the demons that is always waiting for Duke. And Hunter finally saw the film at a friend's place up in Aspen. It was a home cinema. And he actually had himself filmed when the film finished, and he was on the floor rolling around laughing. And I thought, great, he loves it. This was important. Because all through this whole experience was both Johnny and I, it's Hunter. We're just trying to be true to what he wrote and why he wrote it. And that was the great moment of relief. Oh, look at that. It's car chase time. This is exciting. And here comes Janice and Big Brother and the Holding Company, which was at the start of the film, and they're back. I mean, putting together this music for the soundtrack was a joy, because there's so much good music from the time. We couldn't afford a lot of it, but there was enough stuff that we found.
Now, at the time, I remember you saying that the post-production was absolutely exhausting for you. Do you remember that period?
I do and I don't. It was going on because you're just pulling this stuff together. It was what made it difficult was because of Benizio's unpredictable behavior in various takes. Or we do a wide shot, and you do one thing, a mid shot, you do something else. It made it more difficult because it took longer trying to filter through the good stuff and taking out the stuff, especially when you've got Johnny doing the same thing each time. How do you pull that together? So Leslie Walker, who was the editor, she said it would take 4 days with a scene Benicio and cut, and 1 day if he wasn't. But the end result is breathtaking. It's a great exit for Gonzo. And he does this wonderful turn. Nixon! You can't deny how brilliant Benicio is. But that's what movies are about. You can either, there's the actors who can just do it perfectly every time, and the others who give you a lot of material. In fact, Benicio, the last time I saw him when, on the set as we were all leaving, he said, well, I don't know. I hope I gave you enough stuff to work with, which he did. Expecting to fly. I love this shot. It is so horrible.
We're all wired into a survival trip now. No more
It is, I can't imagine anything worse than somebody alone in that horrible mess.
Without ever giving a thought to the grim meat-hook realities that were lying in wait for all those people.
And that's a tank from Desert Storm.
Tank. Desert Storm, yes, we cheated. We lied. Don't believe anything in this film. It's a movie. We were desperate. We're desperate people.
But it's a great speech at the end, or a bit.
No, I agree. It's very good. So, it's basically that tank is saying it never really changes.
Mm-hmm.
As much as you think you can fix, you don't. And
but I don't see it as sad. I see it as liberating.
Good for you. Me too.
Yeah.
But because I lived through it, I feel a bit of sadness as well. Nostalgia. The innocence. You being a Brit with your cynical attitude, and me with an American with all that optimism and belief. To have it all dragged down, and now to be living in an even worse time where there is no good, there's no hope. And we could afford this Stone song. And I think it works very well. I think it's better. The rhythm is better for the end. But we did cut out a very lovely scene where, as he's driving away, he ends up in a little roadside cafe, which was kind of a Norman Rockwell moment in the film, where there's a nice old man behind the counter and a beautiful girl. There's a moment of, that's what it was supposed to be like. And it really slowed the end down. There didn't seem to be a need for it, so we cut it out. And the sad thing is the man behind the counter was Ron Howard, the very famous director's father. And I apologize. And then the Stones are great, but what I really love is then finding the dead Kennedys in a moment now for the end. I mean,
now, you took the film to Cannes in May '98.
We did.
Tell me about how it went down there.
Well, the Jules Jacob, who ran the festival, was convinced it might even win the Palme d'Or. Johnny had been there the year before and had a very bad experience with a film called The Brave, but now we were coming back triumphant. This was going to be his resurrection. Everything was going to be wonderful. And Johnny, Benicio, and I were at the hotel waiting for the end of the big projection in the morning for all the journalists. We were waiting with the PR. No, the PR guy wasn't there. That's what. But suddenly the PR guy walked in, and we thought, well, how'd it go? And he was white-faced. He was ashen-faced. And I said, what? What's wrong? They hated it. They despised it. They really went, it was like feeding frenzy of sharks. And once they get their teeth into something, they just tore it apart. Now, the three of us still had 2 or 3 days left of promoting the film. And it was very difficult talking to people that you suspected were those who hated the film, who were being professional and going on. And it took a couple days before the interviewers would whisper to me, "I've got to tell you, I really liked the film." The fear of liking the film was unbelievable. People were terrified of being seen to find the film worthy of anything. And off it went, and that was it. And now, 28 years later, how many, 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, a millennium later, it is a classic, and here it is coming out again, all cleaned up, polished nicely, untouched by the people who made it.
And having completed this film, that had been 3 movies shot in the US. There was Fisher King, 12 Monkeys, and Fear and Loathing.
Yeah.
And at that time, you'd had enough of making films in the US. And you thought you had to think about Don Quixote, didn't you?
Oh,
and
yes.
That was when that obsession started.
That's when it went on, and from the wonderful time with Johnny in this one, we set off again to make another film together, and it was going to be great. And there were 5 days almost of really wonderful work, except that Jean Rochefort, who was playing Quixote, became very ill, and on the 5th day, he was flown out by helicopter, and that was the last we saw, and that was the end of the film. And so it only took another 29 years, or was it 19 since then? That was 2000. Only another 19 years to finally finish the film. But by then, Johnny had become a superstar and was no longer 30 years old, so that the dream was over. No, I mean, working with Johnny on Quixote was, on this film, what are we talking about? Working with Johnny on, what is the name of this film, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, was just breathtakingly wonderful. It was like, suddenly, it was like being back in Python days. And I think Johnny had always fancied being a Python, and there it was. And the two of us were just clicking, ding, ding, ding. Ideas would throw back and forth really quickly and fast. And I miss all that. I haven't had that much fun for a long time. So we all get older, but Fear and Loathing never gets older. It only gets more decrepit and disturbing. And maybe now in this world we live in now, where everything is so polite, people are so caring, there's so much empathy for everybody else. There are no odd people anymore. We're all nice, lovely people. Maybe it's just what civilization needs now. A bit of roughing up, a bit of rough.
Okay. Thank you, Terry. Many thanks for your recollections and insights.
Viva Las Vegas, says the dead Kennedys. I mean, isn't that a great? I mean, I'd never heard of the Dead Kennedys before I heard about that song. And I said, got to be done. We've got to end with the Dead Kennedys singing Viva Las Vegas. It's so punk raucous. We've moved into another world. And hopefully people get the irony of that song.